So in the first part of the interview with Jordi, we talk about the vaccine development in Singapore. Now we're going to focus on his own experience and talking about the possibilities for Spanish immunologists or for Spanish vaccine development companies here in Singapore. So the first part of the interview will deal about a Spanish immunologist in Singapore. So can you tell us, Jordi, how appealing is the Singaporean market when it comes to Spanish vaccine development companies that may want to settle here in Singapore? Is the market really saturated?
Not at all, and thank you for this question. Actually, it's very appealing, I think, for any Spanish company that is a biologics developer or a vaccine developer to try to set foot in Singapore if their aim is not only the Singaporean market, but also use Singaporean as a hub to develop their products in Southeast Asia. We are talking about vaccines or biologics or any medicine in general, as opposed to any other type of product. It may require further clinical trials or further clinical development to be carried out in the necessary countries of the region, including Singapore. But the Health Authority of Singapore and the European Medicine Agency, they are a la par, they are peers, very strict, and they follow like the FDA, they are at the same level there. And therefore, I think that as a Spanish company, which is used to deal with FDA regulations or EMA regulations, they will have no issue whatsoever to get at the understanding of the local Singapore authority.
Yes, so for a better understanding for the Spanish companies, in terms of the regulatory barriers that they may face, you have talked about the FDA, the HSA here in Singapore. What is a bit of the comparison between the MAA here in Europe, if it's in US, and then here in Singapore?
Correct. If the Spanish company has a prototype of vaccine that is not approved, is not in the market anywhere yet, perhaps is going to, have some difficulty to have this market open right away in Singapore. Because as I mentioned before, the Singapore Health Authority is as demanding as the European agency. However, if the Spanish company already has a market approval for Europe or US or both, it's going to be relatively streamlined to try to bring the product here in Southeast Asia.
Oh, okay. That's perfect. So good to know. So we have talked about the Spanish vaccine development companies. Now let's focus on the human capital. So are Spanish immunologists like yourself or the rest of your colleagues valued as an asset here in Singapore in terms of the qualification, the expertise, and the know-how? What do you think, Jordi?
No, absolutely. I think European scientists in general and also European experts in biomedicine are very highly regarded in Singapore. Not only Spanish, but I can see we have several European colleagues working or studying here in Singapore, and also within the industries as well. So definitely a big asset for Singapore to try to get the talent of European biologists, medical doctors, pharmacologists, chemists, etc.
Yeah. So don't be afraid and enter the Singaporean market because you will be really well regarded. And for those who may be interested regarding the last question, do you perceive a demand for those type of talents here in Singapore?
Okay, sure. That's a very tricky question, but let me try to answer it as accurate as possible. In terms of demand, right? We're talking about demand. I think the academic landscape in Singapore is already quite well saturated with talent. What is required or needed, according to my own experiences, my own opinion, is talent in the industry. So the pharma industry in Singapore, including the vaccine development industry in Singapore, is always in the search for good talent outside of Singapore, and definitely they're always welcome.
Yeah, and that's great to know that the precise subfield that they may be more in demand and maybe more interesting for the Spanish immunologists. And finally, for them as well, do they need any type of qualifications to work here in Singapore?
Absolutely. Of course, a bachelor degree
Yes.
from a Spanish university or European university, but most importantly, a PhD, I would say. So I can see that if you have a PhD in a relevant field that Singapore has determined as a top priority, or if you have a master degree also in a field that is top priority, it would be much easier for you to find a job in Singapore.
Yeah. So just follow Jordi's advice and have really good luck here in Singapore. Thank you so much, Jordi, for giving us an overview of the vaccine development here in Singapore, but also from your own experience, tip and advice for all the Spanish companies and immunologists who may be interested in the market. Thank you so much, Jordi, and hope to see you soon in the Spanish Sling.
Likewise, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And see you next time with more content.